order tonight's meeting, and we'll start with a roll call.
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mr. McClellan? Is absent. Mr. Melcher?
Here.
Mr. Roth? Is absent. Mr. Warpup?
Here.
Mr. Yarger?
Here.
And Mr. Wall?
Here. Thank you. And now we'll move to A5, the revision of the agenda. Mr. Trout, do you have anything for tonight?
Nope, there are no revisions for this evening, Mr. Yoder.
Okay, so we'll move on to items B1, public comment. This is a time for the public to address the board, usually with anything related to our agenda. And tonight we have nobody signed up to speak, but if there's anybody here that would like to speak, now is your opportunity if you'd like to come up to the podium.
I don't have anything for the agenda.
Can you come up to the
Yeah.
podium?
I just don't. Okay.
And then if you could start by giving us your name.
Hi, my name is Tara McDaniel. I currently have 3 children in the school system. I have 1 at Riverview and 2 here at Selman. It's been recently brought to my attention that there are children in other schools that are acting like animals. They call themselves birds. I guess I want to know what the school board stance is on that. I know a friend of mine has already emailed Crestview. Crestview responded that they have no, how did they word that? I can even bring it up.
They are taking a hard stance that they don't have furries within the school. However, partial furries, they're not even like taking a stance on whatsoever, which I'm not sure what a partial furry is. However, I know that it's been brought to my attention there are several throughout the school system. 1 at least at Riverview, 1 at least at Crestview, and I believe 1 at the high school. I couldn't give you exact numbers.
I want to know what the stance is and like how is this not a distraction for our students going to school if these kids are allowed to act like animals and bark and
Meow or whatever animal they want to act.
Mr. Trout?
Yes. Yesterday, this was all brought to my attention over a Facebook post that was put out by a parent over the weekend. Being the superintendent of this district is something that just is absolutely brings me such great pride and joy, and to think that we're dealing with issues like this saddens me, quite frankly. So last night, we know we've had school for a couple weeks. I had not heard of any of this activity going on, and so what I did is I sent an email to every single administrator in this district. And I asked the simple question of, do we have any of this activity going on in our district? I have been since on the phone with principals and administrators throughout the day today. And I can honestly tell the entire community that I can't give you an example of this going on in our district. My administrators couldn't give me an example of any of this going on in our district. It's to create a learning environment which is not only safe for our students, but it also impacts student learning is absolutely, utterly essential for me. And to think that we can stir this all up by putting out a Facebook post that makes the assumption that this is going on in the district absolutely not only saddens me, but infuriates me, quite frankly. Because I have been dealing with, over the last few hours of, oh, I heard that you had litter boxes in your restrooms. Oh, I heard that you have this going on in your buildings, which is absolutely, unequivocally false. I will say as a superintendent of this district, without any reservations whatsoever, our children are at school to learn. And we will not tolerate, nor accept, nor allow any of this type of activity going on in our buildings at any point in time. And if it is, it'll be dealt with swiftly and firmly. The most that I could find today were kids being kids at times, but not anything where I would say that I didn't even know what a furry was 24 hours ago.
Same.
I learned something
heard of
today. I will tell you, as a mother and as a taxpayer and as a community member in this district, that as a superintendent and as principals in this district, we're not going to stand for this, nor we're going to allow it, period. End of story. I can't say it any stronger, and I won't tolerate it. Nor will building principals, nor will directors of education. We are absolutely, totally committed to creating an environment in our schools that are for learning, period. You know, and when we have agenda items coming up here where we're going to talk about valedictorian, salutatorian, top 25, and honor kids that are achieving at a high level, we're going to be about learning for all kids, and we're not going to tolerate this behavior that goes on. You know, we've got school board policy 5511 that talks about we're not going to accept choices that interfere with the educational program of our schools. We're going to prohibit dress code or grooming practices which present a hazard to the health and safety of our students, to interfere with schoolwork, create disorder, or disrupt educational programming. I've talked to countless principals today about discipline policies and procedures and following through and making sure kids are going. There's a reason I don't follow social media, and this is one of them. Somebody can throw out a post, make a statement, assume that it's truth, and then for a day, I am I am trying to track down if and what's going on within this. Do we maybe have a couple kids trying to be funny and barking at each other once in a while? Probably, sure. I would assume that's going on. But to say at the level that it's being assumed that it's happening, or they're furries, or they're, doing any of these type of things would never be tolerated in this district. And I cannot say that to you strongly enough. I could read you policies, I could read you handbooks, I could do all of that, but I will assure you none of that's going to be tolerated in our district, period.
Great, I can appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Yep.
One other thing you said, dress code was, a big thing. You have kids that, and I know this is happening. My daughter can't wear sandals, for instance, without a back to them to school.
Mm-hmm.
But a girl can dress up as an anime character and wear elf ears and the makeup and all this at school. So I don't know if you know that's going on within your school system, but it is.
Well, if that's the case, I'm not aware of that, and that's a direct violation of our dress code. And if you want to contact me tomorrow, I would love to know where, and I'll find out who, and it will stop that day. I will guarantee you.
All right, I can do that.
Okay, yes, you can call right here, ask for Mrs., about called you Mrs. Tudor again, ask for Mrs. Gray, and she will get you in contact with me, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight? All righty, we will move on to item C1, core values discussion.
I have one this evening, just a huge thank you. I don't know how I can say it stronger than that, of anybody and everybody who was engaged with the new stadium openings the last few days, with girls soccer, boys soccer, the football game Friday night. I called Mr. Doherty over the weekend to tell him thank you for all his leadership and everything that he did to make all of that happen. I will tell you, it's just been a wonderful experience for everyone involved that came to fruition. There was a lot of hard work done with that. Yes, we have a couple glitches that we need to work out. Yes, the sound is enough to drive you crazy. And Mr. Markham, and I'm sure, is all over that even today, as I see Mr. McLaughlin shaking his head and Mr. Brimberry shaking his head. But I will tell you what an incredible environment for our kids. And whether they're band students practicing, or soccer kids playing, or football team playing or practicing, I have had countless people come up and tell me what a unique environment for our kids. And the middle school kids were right around me all Friday night, and to hear them talking about can't wait till it's my turn to be out there just gave me chills. Kudos to all of you as board, to Chad for his vision for that too, to all of you for your vision with that, because it has created such an environment for our kids that I just say thank you to all of you for what you have done to make that happen. And to me, when Jay and I were talking about this today, it just shows an example of shared leadership by all of you, by Mr. Daugherty, but also stakeholder focus, you know. And I know Bob was disappointed in the outcome, but I'll tell you, those kids played really hard and really well. And he's the guy that's going to help us turn that program around without a shadow of a doubt. But even to hear our soccer kids and our band kids and everybody else talk about that environment, I'm thrilled for all of them too. So thank you to all of you as a board.
Is there anything else? All right. Then we will move on to item D1, an update on the Viking Distinguished Graduate Program. And I believe we have Mr. McLaughlin and Mr. Hamill with us here tonight to guide us down that road.
Thank you, Mr. Yarger.
Mm-hmm.
So, a day before I was to be approved by you gentlemen on the school board, I was out to breakfast with some folks, and the first thing I got an earful of was the Viking Distinguished Graduate Program. My first meeting at Huntington as the new principal, I had 2 seniors reach out and ask if they could meet with me on July the 5th, my first day in the office. And it was about valedictorian, salutatorian, and the change in the grade scale from an 11-point scale to a 12-point scale. So I sat down with Mr. Hamill and I said, let's get some feedback from our students and our parents about this and see where this takes us. So Mr. Hamill organized the meetings. So that first Friday we were in school, we met with the seniors that were in the top 40 of their class. That following Monday we met with the top 40 juniors, and that following Tuesday we met with the top 40 sophomores and got their thoughts about the Viking Distinguished Graduate Program, as well as valedictorian, salutatorian, and the top 25. That same week, then in the evening, we had a parent meeting, and we invited the top 15 parents from each of those 3 grades and had a discussion with them for about an hour, a little over an hour, gathered their feedback, and came up with the proposal that we've submitted to the board. And that program would be to return to honoring the valedictorian and salutatorian, starting with the class of 2023, and allowing those 2 individuals, or if there are more, we've had some ties in the past for both valedictorian and salutatorian, allowing those individuals to speak at graduation. Their names would be listed on the academic wall of fame near the Commons. Both of them would receive a medallion at graduation. Then we would also return to honoring the top 25 graduates of the class of 2023 and beyond. We are still working through the Viking Distinguished Graduate Program and the updates that we would like to make to that, but we do believe that there is a place for that in our school district and at the high school in particular. And we'd like to tie it to our current Graduation Pathways program, so it's something that not just recognizes that top 10% of our students, but it's something that all of our students can leave the building with that would be beneficial to them, whether they go into college or whether they go in the military or whether they go straight into the workforce. So we're going to work through some of our current courses at Huntington North, culminating in possibly a senior English course where they're able to put some things on paper and actually have a little portfolio to take with them down the road that would be beneficial to them. The other thing that was a part of those meetings was the discussion about changing the grading scale from an 11-point scale to a 12-point scale. And Mr. Hamill and I are still working through that to determine what's the best course of action there to make sure that all students' GPAs are represented correctly and appropriately when that change was made. So we hope to report back with a final Viking Distinguished Graduate Program along with grading scale updates, hopefully by the first meeting in September.
So what you're looking for this evening is, this is for information then, if I'm hearing you right, with approval then at the next board meeting? Would that be accurate, Pat? Is that what you're looking for?
We were hoping for approval for Val and Sal in the top 25 and returning to honoring them tonight.
Tonight, okay.
And then the updates to the Viking Distinguished Graduate and the GPA at another board meeting down the road.
Okay, so it'd be which I am fully behind that recommendation. I absolutely support you and Mr. Hamill's direction with this. I want us to be a district of academic performance, of high achievement. And what greater way to start that discussion than to honor our top students out of our senior class. And so I firmly support Mr. McLaughlin and Mr. Hamill's direction this evening for you to approve returning to the valedictorian salutatorian and also the top 25.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Is it reverting to what we had 4 or 5 years ago, identical, or is there going to be any other weight as far as, I know at the Distinguished Graduate Program, if you were in a certain club or a certain sporting event, or is that going to be a factor, or is it going back to how it used to be?
Not in the valedictorian or salutatorian, that will be strictly
That's just
based on their
GPA.
GPA.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And has there been any consideration of honoring the Val and Sal from last year?
There has been, and
Okay.
trying to determine what that best looks like is kind of where we're at with that. But that was mentioned in multiple meetings that we had either with students or parents, so that's something that we would like to pursue.
Okay.
And I would also like to add the Val and Sal as far as speaking in graduation. We've heard from several different people about our graduation, how it's very student-led, and to have 6 seniors speak and maybe 1 adult, and I think just having them being able to speak and take the time to recognize their class at graduation, I would still, I guess, recommend doing that like we used to, because I know we didn't this past year.
Absolutely. It's about the students, not the adults
Correct.
that are there.
Okay, is there anything else? All right, Mrs. Gray will take a vote.
You take a verbal vote.
Okay.
Roll call vote on that one.
Sure. So we're gonna do a verbal vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? So the ayes have it. Thank you, gentlemen. I think there's gonna be a lot of people very happy about that decision. All right, we'll move on to item E1, the consent agenda. Mr. Trout?
We have several items for your approval this evening. We have, number 1 is the regular meeting minutes from August the 8th, 2022. We have a variety of professional leave requests. I'm seeking for your approval. That's number 2. Certified employee resignations is Rick Diem. It's a technology education, Crestview, effective 8/12/22. Classified employee resignations, Jessica Ambrose, food service pool, Riverview, Hope Kuntz, food service cashier, Leah Martin, food service lead cook, Cammie Tamasak is food service manager here at Ceremony, and Nick Vickery, data integration specialist. ECA, employee resignations, Mike Beaver, 7th grade girls basketball, Riverview, Cameron, help me.
Cavalier.
What's that?
Cavalier.
Cavalier, thank you, is 7th grade boys track. New classified employees, you can see Several of those there: Alicia Barron, cashier at Huntington North High School; Monica Brown, paraprofessional, Crestview; Andy Elliott, security officer at Huntington North High School; Melinda Freniedo, I hope I said that right, I'm sorry if I didn't.
Florentino.
Sure. Florentino, food service pool, Horace Mann; Ann Hawk, food service pool, Riverview; Roxanne Kmeyer, cashier, Crestview; Hope Kuntz, lead cook, Crestview; Jessica Laratz, lead cook, Riverview; Melinda Marshall, paraprofessional at Horace Mann; Leah Martin, manager ceremony, Sasha Myers, cashier, Crestview; Cami Tamasak, manager at Riverview; and Josh Virus, a bus driver. And then we have several new BCA employees for your approval this evening. I'm also going to jump down to a new administrative position. I want to spend a little time with that just for you this evening, is that we're requesting your approval for the position of Assistant Director of Technology. When we hired Mike Sumter as the tech director, we looked at organizationally our efficiencies and our effectiveness inside the tech department, and we really feel like, based on the work that needs to be accomplished there, that would be in our best interest that we would have an assistant to the technology director. So I'm asking for your approval for that this evening. Going along with that, then, the new administrator for that position would be Nick Vickery. We'd like to hire as the Assistant Director of Technology. Classified employee transfer, we have one listed for you there this evening. We have several requests to accept donations for the total of $9,931.40. And a huge thank you to all of these contributors for that. At Andrews, they're requesting permission to accept a donation of snacks, art supplies, Cardinal cash prizes, and back-to-school supplies for students valued at approximately $700 from an anonymous donor. Thank you very much. Flint Springs Elementary is requesting permission to accept a donation in the amount of $700 from Donors Choose, awarded to Lauren Davis's classroom for the purchase of books that will be used for independent reading time. And so I'd like to thank them for that. Lincoln Elementary is requesting permission to accept 4 donations. The first is the amount of $305.40 from Donors Choose, awarded to Mandy Stevenson's 5th grade class for the purchase of light covers, stools, and dry erase spots for calming and inviting classroom environment. The second is in the amount of $453 awarded to Deanna Herrendine's 1st grade class for the purchase of whiteboards to be used for interactive learning and small group activities, as well as a file cabinet to keep files and teaching activities and supplies organized. The third donation is the amount of $600 in teacher supplies for Dawn Hill of Century 21 Bradley for the use in their classrooms. And the fourth donation is the amount of $373 from, Donors Choose, awarded to Cassidy Sheehan for the purchase of science materials in the 1st grade classroom. Roanoke Elementary is requesting permission to accept a donation in the headphones and earbuds valued at approximately $200 from Faith Chapel United Methodist Church for the students to use in their classrooms. Thank you to them. And lastly, we are accepting, HCCSC is requesting permission to accept 12 8-foot outdoor benches valued at approximately $6,600 from Scott Husband and Huntington County Solid Waste Management District to be used at each of the schools and the Learning Center. So thank you to all of those people. And lastly, out of the consent agenda, looking for your approval for the accounts payable and payroll voucher registers.
Thank you, Mr. Trout.
Mhm.
We'll try to get more names in next time's list.
Thank you, Mr. Yager.
Would anybody like to make a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
And is there a second?
Second.
And would anybody like to pull any items? Or does anybody have any discussion on any of the items? Okay, so none being heard, we will take a vote. And that motion passes 5-0. So we'll move on to finance and move to section F1, the financial reports for the month of July.
Yes, you have the financial reports for July in front of you, which includes revenues, expenses, and cash balances for our major funds. You'll see that our cash balance did increase in July. Some of that is due to decrease in expenses, and most of that is due to the fact that we only had one meeting in July, and some of those expenses were pushed into August. There was a decrease in the operations cash balance, which is to be expected, and we continue to see that decrease until we make our next transfer, and there was no change in debt service or rainy day.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the financial reports? Alrighty, then we will move to item F2, the 2022-23 School Police and Resource Officer Agreement.
In your board packet, what I am seeking this evening is your approval of the 2022-23 School Police and Resource Officer, otherwise known as SRO agreement, between the City of Huntington and the Huntington County Community School Corporation. When you open that document and you look at that, you'll notice that it's good. The term is for 1 year, and the consideration is we as the school, the city and the school agree each to pay 50% of the costs and expenses associated with this, and then the rest of that is pretty standard from what we have done before in the years past. And I'm seeking your approval for that this evening.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion on the agreement for the police and resource officers?
Motion to approve the 2022-23 School Police and Resource Officer Agreement.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Gray? I'm sorry, was there any questions? That motion also passes 5-0. So we'll move on to the 2023 budget adoption calendar.
Mrs. Monroe, you want to talk to this just briefly?
Sure. You have seen this budget adoption calendar before and approved it. We just made a slight revision because we are presenting the budget now as a whole. So we do not need the next board meeting, is that the 12th, I believe? We do not need that for the budget process. So we just removed that.
Okay?
Do we need to approve that new budget calendar?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the amended budget adoption calendar for 2023.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, then we will take a vote on the budget calendar. And that passes 5-0, so we'll move on to the 2023 budget presentation. Mrs. Monroe?
Yes, I get to introduce her though first, so I don't let you just go right to that. You hear me speak a lot at these meetings and in several of our other meetings about Mrs. Monroe and the impact that she not only has had on me professionally through the years, but also us as a district. And so it's exciting for me this evening that you get to learn from her firsthand as she presents our 2023 budget for the school year. This is an opportunity not only for you to learn about where we're going with the budget and what our plans are, but also for you to ask any questions. This is a rather in-depth peek inside our budget. And so please don't hesitate to stop her at any point in time through this process as we're going through this evening to share this with you. So Mrs. Monroe, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, and I love questions, so feel free. We're starting out, this will be our first night as the process of the budget process. It's kind of a thing. You have several pieces that you have to go through in order to satisfy the Department of Local Government Finance, which I'll probably refer to as a DLGF, just because it's a big mouthful. But we're going to start out with the budget process. What is our budget process? And the budget process is like putting together a puzzle. You have to have all these little pieces of information, which Edette has been great about getting those pieces of information to me. And we put those all together, and then finally we come up with a budget that hopefully we can all live with. Keep in mind that there are many budget accounts as you go through this. There are 3 budgeted funds: education fund, operations, and debt service. And there are approximately 1,600 budget account numbers. And when I do this, and we do it, we go through each and every line of that budget. We look at historical spending. We look at what we've spent so far in this year in order to, up through June 30th, in order to plan for the next year. So that's how we start the process. Well, we start out, and I'm just going to show you a few pieces of this process as we go through so you'll know what we kind of have to look for. We start out with the historical enrollment and most generally the fall enrollment numbers, but I wanted to show you the spring of 2022 as well. We look back, and as you can see in 2018 we had 5,006 students, and it's dropped each year a little bit. In last fall, we counted 4,915 students in the fall, but spring we had only 4,824. So it went up from 21 to 22, about 90 students, and then dropped again in the spring, about the same number, about 91 or so. This year, we do not have the official count day yet. That will be in September. But right now, our account that we have is a possible 4,880 students. Now that is, we have more on the rosters, but some of those students have not shown up yet. So we kind of back those out because most likely if they haven't shown up so far, they may not. But we might get a few new students in. So that 4,880 may vary a little bit. Now you wonder, why is this important at all? Well, we get our funds for the education, for our money from the education fund from these numbers. This goes to the state, and the state funds the education fund, and it's based on our enrollment. So that's why these numbers are very, very important. That's where we get most of our money from the state for the education fund. Our next piece that we have to look at is our June 30th cash balances for this year. This process that we have to go through for the DLGF is online through a program called Gateway. And there are multiple steps that you have to make through Gateway. And one of them is they want to know what is our cash balance in each of the funds. That shows them how much we have right now at that time, plus we're going to do revenue, expenses for the rest of this year. How much money are we going to end up at the end of the year? This is why this June 30 cash balance is very important. And you can see the numbers up there. Now, you'll notice I added the rainy day fund, the school lunch, and the curricular materials. Some people may know that as textbook rental. At old school, it's textbook rental. But I noticed that you had asked for those in the past, so I wanted to show you what those June 30th cash balances are. All those cash balances are very good for June 30th. We are doing quite well in the curricular materials. Rainy day fund could be a budgeted fund if you choose to spend any of that money. Once you choose to spend it, we would have to ask the DLGF for more permission to spend that money. But there has been no indication that you need to use that rainy day fund.
So,
Yes.
Question related to the rainy day fund. Say we come into a situation where we need to spend money out of the rainy day fund.
Yes.
I'm assuming then we would have to do a public hearing because it's not currently budgeted, and then budget it basically, and then get permission from DLGF.
Correct.
So it's a process.
Yes, it is a process, and you've heard of additional appropriation.
Yes.
You did a couple of those earlier this year. That's the process you have to go through. You have to advertise. So, if you need to use it, you're always, hopefully, those of us who do the budget are always looking ahead and seeing that, oh no, we're going to have a problem here, that we really need that money. And so we have ample time. Once we do it, that's not a real lengthy process. It's not as lengthy as the actual budget process, but you have to have time.
Okay,
So
so-
that's a good question.
So,
Yes. Go ahead.
one other question for John. Since we haven't had these wonderful John questions, I have one for you now. How typically do you handle a rainy day fund? I'm not picking on you, Becky. See, I'm
Oh,
going
that's
back.
Yeah,
okay.
okay,
Hey,
two
good.
steps. When we go through the strategic planning process and we look at our funds, one of the things I'm going to ask you is this, is we need to satisfy the State Board of Accounts through the process of determining what could we possibly use the rainy day fund for. Then I'm going to work with you on what % of our total budget would you like to see be part of the rainy day fund. To answer your question, in the past, what have I used that for? Is I consider it an emergency fund for payroll right now for us. So for whatever reason, we don't get our draws from the state, for whatever the reason would be, we have enough there right now that we can cover payroll for, one payroll in case something would happen, that we can have that payroll covered for that piece. But one of the questions I have, as being your new superintendent, is what's the percentage that you would like to see in this fund? And we are going to begin having those discussions this fall as a board, because then we will also be looking at, when we're talking about when we're talking about elementary and secondary education, we're going to play that balancing act between what do we need to spend our funds for our kids each and every day, and what do we want to make sure that we have reserves for just in case, right? But today, you've done a really wise thing. You've covered a payroll in there right now. So for whatever reason, we don't get our draws from the state, we can still make payroll a week from Friday, in so many words.
So, and I guess I should have been more clear on my question. Is
Mhm.
do you typically budget that, or do you typically leave it unbudgeted and then go through the additional process?
I typically leave it unbudgeted and go through the process.
Okay. That's what I needed to know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of advantages to do it in that means, and so when we go through the strategic planning process this fall, one of the conversations that we're going to have as a board is, what's the percentage that we're looking for in our rainy day fund? I will tell you right now, you're within the window of what most school districts do throughout the state of Indiana. But that doesn't mean that's what we have to do along the way, because that's one of the first things when Becky and I came on board, and I was your business manager last winter, is we looked at that rainy day fund, looked at that percentage, and you're easily within the window of what is acceptable. But that may not be where we want to go long-term with whatever our plans are. Okay?
Cool. Thank you for that clarification and information.
Yep.
So that dollar amount that has to be, or you have to request use of it, is that any dollar amount?
As long as you have the cash.
So $1 clear up to whatever?
Correct.
Correct.
The total amount, yes.
If we wouldn't happen to get our draw from the state, I couldn't wait 2 weeks to have our next board meeting. So we would probably call an emergency board meeting, but I know I have the funds that we can pull from. And you may say, well, that will never happen. Well,
It did happen
she and I are
many years ago.
Yeah, she and I are living examples that it has happened. I mean, strange things have happened. Right now, what we have it budgeted for, and I've never really shared that with you, is what we have it budgeted for is to cover a pay period in case we don't get our draw for whatever reason from the state.
Does the state require us to have an idea, or is that just something that you keep internally?
There's no recommendation, the state doesn't say you have this or that or whatever the case may be, no.
Okay.
This is what we do. That's why this is gonna be an interesting conversation for us moving forward as a board, is what do you want that percentage to be? Mr. Brimberry coming here, being a superintendent in another district, will bring you a very unique perspective too. So, there's two of us here that can say to you, here's our past history, here's what we've done, and here's what we have used it for along the way too. You don't wanna have such a healthy rainy day fund that it keeps you from doing what you're trying to get done in the classroom, but yet you need to have reserves in place in case, exactly what it says, in case there is something that happens that we need to get to it.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
And I can almost assure you, if you apply for a budget for the rainy day fund, and it's an emergency, a true emergency like for payroll, you will not be turned down.
Right.
They will approve your budget, so. So, any other questions on the cash balances? Well, then, our next piece that we look at is what do we expect to get for the rest of this year? This is all required in that great big puzzle piece. And in the education fund, we basically are getting our basic grant money, and we have about $17,500,000 left to acquire for the rest of the year. There's a few other little things like dividends, area vocational school, other little revenues here and there that we get maybe from rentals or from maybe even a donation for the education fund. That doesn't happen a lot, but it could. So all of that is what we expect to get the second half of 2022 for the education fund. And then?
Because I like to ask questions.
Sure.
And this is the fun
Okay.
part. So when we are capped at that 15% of transfer between the education fund and the operations fund, is that based off of the amount of the basic grant, or does that include the extra components for like vocation and stuff like that?
It's mainly the basic grant.
So that's the
yes.
number that it's basically based on?
Right,
Okay.
yes. And then we do the same for debt service and operations, and you can see most of our money from those two, for those two funds, come from local property tax. In addition, we get license excise tax, commercial vehicle excise, financial institution tax, but the primary is property taxes. Now, you'll see on operations, local income tax, and that is another little piece that we get quite a bit of money from. You can see there's $228,000 there approximately, so we got that much also to begin with. You can put that in, well, not really debt service, but you could put it in education if you want. But operations really needs it more than education funds. So, but property tax is our main goal here to get our money for those two funds.
And historically, I think just this year is the first year we actually started putting it in the operations fund, is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for that, I learned that from you.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
So for those out there that don't know, what comes out of operations, so education just pays.
And I'm gonna get to that, if
Okay.
I can do it now if you
All right.
want, but
Nope.
it's
Nope.
coming,
She's gonna get
it's
you
coming
in the
down the
weeds.
line here.
She's gonna get you in the weeds here in just a second. Yep.
I like the weeds.
Okay.
I'm allergic to
Our next big piece that we have to look at is the assessed valuation. And I want to say that the assessed valuation of property comes from the county assessor's office. We do not have any control over that number. But as you can see, each year, the assessed valuation for Huntington County Community School Corporation has went up approximately 4 to 5% each year. Now, this year, for next year is, in my opinion, an anomaly. The assessed valuation that is estimated, and this is, we received this from two financial institutions that they said that we did have that assessed valuation of $1.966 billion. You can see from 2022, that's about a 15% increase. That is very unusual, but
Just so that, like what Matt was saying, so all the people who maybe don't understand exactly what is that value taking consideration? Is that all the properties in our county? Essentially, is that what that
It's
is?
tax, that has
Yes.
a property tax bill attached to it.
Both personal property and real estate property, correct?
Yes, it's personal property, farm ground, and then business. There's like 3 categories. So, yes. So.
I just want to say the double bullet point at the bottom, okay? For those who are watching us, not just only here, but at home, I have been asked why I raised, more than just a handful of occasions, why the assessed valuation, why I raised the assessed valuation so much. And I will tell you, I have nothing, as the superintendent of the school district, that is not done by us as a district, okay? That is done through the county's assessor's office. Okay, so that's really important because it's really confusing at times too, but I have heard of, I've been talking to superintendents across the state. The highest number I've heard is 24% increase, and the lowest I've heard is 10. Just from people I have been talking to across the state, because when I heard ours was 15, that is significantly more than if you track it from 2018 down. That's significantly more just this year, and what many of my colleagues across the state are telling me. That is also what they're finding in their districts. Now, understand, that's me contacting 10 or so superintendents across the state, various degrees, various sizes. But I talked to one individual who's up 24% down to the 10. So we're in that middle there along the way.
So is that number gauged more economically versus, I was thinking it was more of your, where you are, your location, growth, what's around you and stuff like that. But to me, if you're saying that you're hearing everybody's up, so then that's more,
What
Well, and that is a good question. And the only thing, now, lots of times when your assessed valuation increases significantly, it's because like a housing addition came in, many houses, so that's new property, or a new business comes in, and that raises it significantly. In this case, it's statewide, so I'm just guessing that the assessor's offices statewide are looking at all the property and increasing it by a certain percentage. I really
So they have their
cannot.
own formula?
They have their formula. They go, supposedly, they'll come around and look at properties. I mean, I don't think they hit every property in every year, but
No,
they go around on a
it's
schedule.
It's a quarterly trending process.
Yes.
Having worked at the county for a long time, and I know it's recently changed. But
Yes.
they assess property, I think, on a quarterly basis, not quarterly, but every 4-year basis. So your house gets reassessed by the assessor's office every 4 years, I believe. And then in between that time, they do trending. And I think, and I don't know, it would be interesting to reach out to the assessor and ask, but I think with the housing market the way it has been going on around here, I think trending is playing a large factor into that. I do know last year too, we had a larger personal property amount when Michigan Electric redid all of their power lines. That became personal property as well, and that raised us for a while as well. I was just actually looking at a website from the county just to see if I could see maybe what the big impact was, but it doesn't look like it's been updated recently. So I'll have to see if I can find that out.
But that's why I just want to emphasize that, you know, Becky has there in the bottom of her slide is that keep in mind that the county assessor's office is the entity that determines the assessed valuation. So this was a conversation with a couple people with me at the football game Friday night. And I just had to say, I appreciate you think I do that, but that's not in my realm of influence. And so that's done by the county's assessor's office.
So is that they don't certify this net assessed value though until later in the year, correct?
That is correct. This is an estimated, and if we go to our next slide, you'll see this is an estimated assessed valuation. Now, I'm always very conservative and very cautious of those big jumps like that, if you have that. It could as easily, with trends, decrease next year. So you have to be very careful of the assessed valuation that you actually use to trend or to come to your tax rates for the year. You don't want to use that big value to drive the tax rates down too far, because then next year it could take a mighty jump, and that's not a good thing to do. So you always use a lower assessed valuation when you're trying to come to your tax rate. And you'll see that down at the bottom, we're using a conservative $1.77 billion. That's about 90% of that $1.9 billion. And we do that just as a cushion, just because that's not certified yet, that 1.9 billion. But the 1.77 billion is about 4% higher than the AV we had last year that was certified. So we're trying to be very conservative in that.
And the reason we do that is so we don't have sticker shock, basically, correct?
That is correct, in that we don't lower the tax rate. Well, you do not want to use the higher, because if it comes down lower, then your tax rate, you can only use the number that you advertised as your advertised tax rate.
Right.
If it comes down real low and the tax rate needs to go up, you're not gonna get it. It's then.
So you basically got those estimates from Baker Tilly and stuff like that?
Correct.
Have you reached out to the assessor's office just to see where they think it might be?
I did
No.
not, but I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll write
I
that
know
down.
the
do
assessor's
that.
Terry Boone, I know it might be wise to at least reach out to her and just say, hey, the safety number that we're using, is that a good safety number?
Sure, yeah.
But we use Baker Tilly a lot,
Yeah.
and they're very well versed across the state, and they've been spot on with my work with them the past, since January, that, I agree with you from that standpoint, Ryan, but that's why we do this multi-step budget process that we do with the state then.
And the only other reason another reason to reach out to her, though, is just curious to ask her, seeing she's the one doing those assessments, why she thinks, if it is going up, what that might be, and if she trends that's maybe just a historical minor blip and it may go back down, but just to get maybe some historical information and stuff like that from her, if it's at all possible.
Yes,
And I know-
definitely will do that.
Yeah, so, just interesting.
Good.
Well, then we get to our budget estimates. Now, remember I said that I look at each of those 1,600 lines of account numbers to see how I think we need to budget for the next year. And this is what I came up with. We have a budget estimate, this is our expenses, that of 34 million plus in the education fund. The debt service fund, 9.1 million. Now, debt service it's fixed. You know that you have so many loans, so many bonds, leases, and you can't do anything about that. You just know you have to pay that, so it's pretty well fixed. Operations fund, we have 16 million plus that we budgeted. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is what we're gonna end up with, because the DLGF has to look at everything, certify AV, certify tax rates, and so on and so forth. So we hope, with the way we've budgeted, that this will at least be our budgets for next year. Keep in mind that we're gonna go back to these AVs a little bit. We have what we call the circuit breaker. I don't know if I'm sure you've all heard of that before. And that just means that at some point, people are paying so much in taxes that they reach a certain percentage. For property owners, it's 1%, farm, it's 2%, business, it's 3%. Once they reach that cap, that's all they pay. Even if our tax rate says they need to pay more, they don't pay it, because that's the circuit breaker. That affects us because however many people reach that circuit breaker, that amount above is what we have to back out of our budgets. This year, it's estimated that we have about $3 million in circuit breaker money we have to back out, which I have already done. Now, Baker and Tilly thinks that's a real conservative number, and it may be, but I like to be conservative in the budget. I don't want surprises. So if it comes out less, then that's great. That'll be good for us. It'll give us a little bit more funds. But that's our budget estimates, and I want to explain a few of that to you. We'll go to a slide on the debt service. This is what we have to commit to the DLGF. We look at the amounts that we owe. You can see we have several bonds. We have a 2020 bond, 2018, 2016 bond, the common school loan, and then we have a new anticipated debt service payment that will come to play in 2023. Our payments will start at that point in time. And at the bottom, I'll come back to that in just a minute, it says unreimbursed textbook rental is what it is, or curricular material. What that is we have several students who are on free lunches, but they also get free textbooks. We calculate that, and in November or so, we send that to the state, and they reimburse us a certain percentage of that money that we do not collect from the students, or the parents, I should say. But it used to be they would reimburse us the whole amount that we, needed for that. Now it's a percentage. So whatever that percentage is, they give it to us, and then whatever is left over, they send us a letter and said, yes, you get this much money back, but in 2023, we're not gonna get back $65,629. You can put that in debt service, and then when you reach 2023, you can transfer that much money over to the textbook rental account. So they pretty well come out whole at the TBR, the curricular materials. I'm sorry, I keep saying TBR. It comes out pretty well even then at that point in time. But that's the only little extra thing that you can really put in debt service. Then if you scoot over a little bit, you'll see that $9,166,727. That's what you saw back on the previous slide that we need to budget for 2023. Then they also want us to show what we're going to pay in 2024, because many times they'll give us the first half of 2024, they'll give us a percentage of that money as cash balance to in 2023 to help us make payments the first half of 2024. So it's just kind of a cycle, and this is fixed. I mean, there's nothing we can change on that whatsoever. So, and now if we go back to our slides. Now, here's the operations fund and what we were talking about. Okay, it consists of 4 different parts: capital projects, transportation, bus replacement, and costs that used to be a part of the general fund many years ago and now is in operations. So we'll talk about bus replacement first, because that's always a big one. We have budgeted $600,000 for 2023. And as you can see, you have to now budget out for bus replacement 5 years plus the year that you're budgeting, which is 2023. So essentially 6 years, basically. In 2023, we have budgeted for 4 buses. Now, I received these prices from the Director of Transportation in Huntington Schools. So she's predicting that much money for each bus, $140,395. We are hoping very much it does not come in that high. And if it does not, and if it kind of stays level or a little bit higher than what we're paying now, we might be able to eke out 1 more bus for 2023, which we really need to do. And I will tell you why on that. Our buses, we have 22 buses that are 12 years or older already. The thing is that the DLGF says you should start replacing buses once they reach 12 years old. We have 22, 3 of them are white buses, 1 is a transit bus, and 18 are the big yellow buses. Those are all either 12 years or older. That's a lot of buses out of about 87 buses. That's a good percentage. We need to make that up, but we can't do that. I think there were some I know there were some years where no buses were purchased, or maybe 1 or 2 buses. With a school corporation this size, it should be a lot more per year. However, you have to have the funds to do that with. And so we have 4 for 2023, but we have a little bit of good news. Last week, 4 of the 5 buses that were ordered in 2021 just came in. Now that's a big, a long time. They were having trouble getting parts to build the buses, I guess, and so on and so forth. So, but 4 of those buses will be delivered the first part of this week, and those buses came in at about $106,569 per bus. So even if you add a little bit more to that for next year, we might be able to, like I said, squeeze out 1 more bus, and that would be really good. We have put in for the next several years 5 buses that we hope we can eventually budget enough to get at least 5 per year. It's going to take us a while to catch up, but we'll work at it. So, any questions on that? Well, the next part, excuse me, let me have a drink of water here, is transportation in the operations fund. And we've budgeted approximately $4 million for the transportation for 2023. Those dollars fund bus driver and transportation personnel salaries and benefits, like mechanics, the director of transportation, so on and so forth. It also pays for parts and supplies to keep our over 12-year-old buses running, and fuel, of course. And we know how much fuel is right now for diesel, and most of our buses are diesel. So in addition, we also have costs associated with extracurricular. So each school might have field trips or sporting events, and that's been budgeted here for the bus driver pay and fuel and so on and so forth. So the next part is capital projects. And capital projects costs are now included in the operations fund. They used to be a fund all by themselves. This includes technology, purchase of mobile or fixed equipment, land and building acquisition, professional services, maintenance of equipment, and I always put in money for emergency allocations. Did we have a chiller go down, or something, you know, a window was broken, a great big door or something that was broken accidentally? We have to be ready for those little emergencies that might come up. So I will show you on our next pullout is the capital projects plan. Capital projects plan has to be 3 years in nature. That's another ruling by the DLGF. And 2023, we have to be as accurate as we possibly can for 2023. Now, 2024 and 2025, we make our best estimate that we can. But we don't know what's going to happen really another year from now. It's already, you have to plan ahead for 2023. So planning for 2024 and 2025 is you just make your best estimate that you can. And then we'll revise that each year as we go along if things come up. But as you can see, this is for the whole corporation, the capital projects portion of the operations fund. And the biggest item on the list, if we can go down just a little bit, thank you. 1.9 million is for technology, and that includes salaries for tech people, applications, equipment, all kinds of different things that we have to have. Cybersecurity technology. It's just advancing, and you're going to probably see that number go up a lot as we go along. But that's the big part of it, and you'll also see up a little bit on emergency allocations. I've factored in, I kind of look at everything, and then if I have quite a bit left over that I think we can do, that's why the odd number for emergency allocations. But we have that built in now in case we do have some sort of emergency. And at the end of the year, if we don't use that, we can always purchase some fixed equipment if we need to, or use it as cash for the next year. So there's different things that you can use for.
So if you go over that number, you get in trouble, but if you go under it, you don't?
Well, you don't really get in trouble as long as you have permission to spend. In the operations, see, you've got all those 4 different parts. So you could technically overspend in capital projects, but underspend in transportation, we'll just say. And if you do that, as long as you stay within that whole, it was 16 million you saw a while ago, as long as we stay in that, that's what we have permission, if they allow it, that's what we have permission to spend. We can't spend 1 penny more than what that total operations fund is. You can spend under it all you want, that just resorts to cash for the next year and helps bring down your tax rate again, so, yeah. Good question. Now, the next one is the items previously in the old general fund, and these used to be, many of you may not know that, but it used to be just a fund by itself. But now, these have to be part of the operations fund. Such things as electric, lights, power, maintenance uniforms, maintenance staff salaries, central office staff salaries, phone bills, some equipment repairs and maintenance, pest inspections, insurance. Those things used to be a big part of the general fund, but now they're part, that 4 parts of the operations fund. And we have to budget for those as well. That's included in that $16 million figure that you all saw earlier. Does that answer all your questions on that?
Was that also then represented in that spreadsheet, not the form that you showed prior? Is that just in those other areas?
That capital projects?
Yeah.
That's only capital projects
Okay.
because they require us,
To have
even
that,
though
right.
we don't have a separate fund, we still have to do a 3-year
Okay.
plan, but it's part of the whole operations.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Now, here's what everybody usually likes to see, the proposed advertised tax rates. And it's nice to say that we are proposing and asking for permission to advertise in debt service 0.4113. In 2022 is 0.4800. And operations, we're proposing 0.6029, and last year was advertised as 0.6821. Education fund, no tax rate. It's funded solely by, well, almost all by the basic grant from the state. Now, you might say, how do you get to those figures? And that's another part of the whole thing, the AV, the assessed valuation. What you do is you go through this whole process in Gateway, and you come up with a property tax levy that you want to, you need that much money to fund your operations fund or debt service. And you take that levy, which in debt service, it's $7,300,000. You divide that by that, remember that assessed valuation that I said was conservative that we're going to use, and you come up with that tax rate. And the levy, property tax levy in operations was $10,700,000. That property tax levy is capped by the state, DLGF, I should say. I think it was something like $10,750,000 or something like that. So I just kept that underneath that. That's their estimated. Now, they could come back and say, oh no, you only have a cap of 9 million, but they've already pretty well said that's pretty firm,
Is
so.
that part of the growth coefficient and those tax levies?
Yes.
And do you know what that percentage increase was this year?
4%.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Do you all know what that means too? I asked it. So DLGF allows us, there is a formula that it's created, correct?
Yes.
That they say how much we can increase that coefficient every year.
That is correct, and it's pretty well statewide too.
Yeah.
It's not just for one corporation. Now, I wanted to tell you that is the proposed advertised tax rate. However, if that AV, the assessed valuation comes back at that $1.9 billion, it's gonna go, the actual tax rate will go down significantly. So, and it always does that anyway, if you estimate right and do your expenses high and your revenue low, you'll have a little higher proposed tax rate than what actually will come to fruition, so.
So we're advertising worst-case scenarios, what?
Correct, yes. Well, we hope, yes.
Yes, that's what we hope.
That's what we hope for, yes. So I guess I'm just now we are asking for approval to advertise the 2023 complete budget as presented, including the capital projects and bus replacement plans. And I say that specifically because the DLGF also requires us, and Cindy's going to show you the two notices to taxpayers. One has the total budget estimate plus when are the hearings, you know, what time are they, where are they, what date, and so on and so forth. That one's the one for specifically the capital projects and bus replacement plan. The DLGF specifies that we have to advertise those two separately. So once again, we tell everybody where the public hearing's gonna be, what time, what date, and so on and so forth. And the other one is just it's pretty similar, but it shows every one of the notice to taxpayers, so. Yeah, there you go, there it is. So see, it's similar, but if you go on down, see there's that estimated school operations max, I guess it's $10,743,000. And then the property tax credit estimate of $3,017,000. And then all of the budgeted funds and so on and so forth. And that's what we're asking permission, and I'll be glad to take any more questions, and I thank you for letting me go on and on.
So Becky, let's just talk specific tax rate then.
Okay.
You know, we have made a commitment as a board to our community that we're not going to raise the tax rate. And you can see here by what we have done this evening that we have held true to that promise
Yes.
along the
Yes.
way. So when Becky and I were having multiple conversations about this, we always lead and drive with, we're not going to raise tax rate. And so I hope our public sees that this evening, that when we put those documents together, and specifically that one slide, that we are accomplishing that goal by not doing that. We're trying to be a fiscally responsible organization, you know, in our community. You know that my passion is about impacting student performance, and we can still do that through this without raising the tax rate. As a matter of fact, it may come in, we don't know
Yeah.
at the end, but it may come in even lower than what it is. But Becky makes me smile because her approximates are usually spot on by the dollar, and even her approximates she gives you by the dollar. And so, Becky, I just want to say thank you for all your work in this. Working with her, I have a much better grasp and my arms around specifics within our budget than where I had when I was in the spring. And now we're at a point where we know specifically where we're at with every single one of our funds along the way and what our plan is moving forward. And so to you, I say thank you. You are awesome. And,
It's a labor of joy for me
Yeah.
because I enjoy doing this, so.
But as a community, it should be very comforting to know that we have the dollars we need to educate the children, to continue to make the upgrades to our facilities that we need, with keeping our promise of doing it inside and being fiscally responsible in the process, so.
Thank you for a thorough presentation. That's.
Thank
that's-
you.
that's
Thank you
one
for
I've had since I've been on.
listening.
Yeah, that's my 6th presentation and by far the most informative.
Oh, well,
So,
thank you very
thank
much.
you.
I
As
appreciate
it
that.
being such an informative one, can we get a copy of your slide deck after we're done? Can you make sure that
That
gets
will
sent out?
be posted,
have one?
yeah,
Yeah, I
that'll be
think we
posted
have
in
it.
board docs, so you'll be able to see it.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Mrs. Monroe. We will move on to item G1, award a bid for Craig Baum Field demolition.
So wait, hey, back up.
Time out.
Back up.
Yep.
We need to make you take action here on one step here, okay?
The.
I have action.
Yeah, don't we need to approve
Cindy's
the
gonna put it
advertisement?
up here for you.
Oh, yes, you're right.
You're so excited.
I was still on F3. I was
Oh,
enthralled.
not a-
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve advertising the 2023
Right.
budget.
Make a motion that we advertise the 2023 budget as presented.
Thank you, and is there a second?
Second.
And is there any questions? I think we pretty well covered everything.
And if we didn't, she answered them before we got to them, so that's good.
Still on the adoption calendar. Okay, and that passes 5-0, and now we will move on to item G1.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Park is here this evening. Steve, do you want to share with us, if you would, the results of a bid recommendation that we've had here for Craig Baum demolition?
Yes, we received bids August the 11th. We had 2 bids that we received. There were 2 bids that were received late that we did not open. It was returned to the bidders. We are recommending that Amor Excavating be awarded the bid as their base bid and alternate price for a total of $230,000 and $230,675. And we have met with the contractor on site, walked through the project, and feel confident that they're in line to do the work, and plus they're a local contractor.
Timeframe still sticking true to what we approved earlier?
Yes, for the most part. We found out that they're not using the practice field over at the site this season, so we can start demolition sooner. So there could be some things that are really more internal to the building that they have to do to prepare for the major demolition. The major demolition will probably still be in December. That's the appropriate, best time for that.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Park. Is there a motion to accept the bid recommendation?
I'll make the motion to approve the bid to demolition Craig Baum Field as presented by Mr. Park.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion?
Started seeing maintenance, it looks like they're starting to pull some usable equipment out of there. Is this still gonna allow them to get everything that they need out of there before demolition happens?
Yeah, at the pre-bid meeting, Steve, right, you were there, you have been through with everything that's to remain there, and then,
Yeah, everything's been removed at this point that's going to be removed. So everything that's in the site will be the contractor's responsibility to remove. And if they, in there to do with whatever.
right.
So if something happens and they get it all done, say in February, will they make sure that we have green grass in April?
Yes, that would be part of that. And once the demolition is done, we'll be coming into the planting time, which will be in that April timeframe, which is when we said to be complete.
Okay.
So that'll continue on through.
I just wanted to make sure, the 120 days to complete, and to me, green grass is completed, but that may not fall in, it may fall past the 120, so.
Yeah, they're on tap to make sure that it turns green.
Okay.
Okay. I think we have a motion and a second, so if there's no other questions, we will move on to a vote. And that motion passes 5-0, so we'll move on to items H1, items of discussion by board members. I want to welcome Mr. Brimberry to the boardroom tonight. We hope your first day was all you expected.
It was a great
And then
first
some.
day, and, you know, it seems like a long time getting here, but it was a great first day, and for the board's purposes, I think Mr. Trout, Mr. Peters, Cindy, and the whole group has been it's hard to be in another district when you're trying to get here, and their communication has been first class, so it was a good first day, but honestly, the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've been so impressed with Huntington and how they do business, so I appreciate it.
Great. Does anybody else have anything they'd want to discuss tonight?
I just want to reiterate what Mr. Trout said a little earlier about the first big few days of the new stadium, multi-purpose stadium. Was, as somebody who's old enough to remember when they opened up the gymnasium back in 76, 77, which is a long time ago, I was a kid that thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And judging by the response from a lot of the kids and the families who were there on Friday night, I think they felt the same way I did when they built the gym. So I just can't tell you how cool that was to see. So congratulations to all of the kids. I thought the game turned out to be really good too. So
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody ever knew about the parking, but from a guy that showed up late, I showed up right at the end of halftime, and I've been to a lot of games at Craigbaum Field, and I've always found parking at the shopping center, and I couldn't find any parking in the high school. Tennis court side, front, I mean, yeah, it was awesome.
As I was pulling out from the game Friday, there were people who parked in the front grass area, and I'm like, been interesting to see where everyone ended up parking, and if that to me, that's a great problem to have, that we have a hard time finding parking.
Long concession lines and hard parking, good problems.
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yep.
Both are good problems, I feel.
It's exciting to see people excited again.
Mhm.
Anything else? Okay, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, we're dismissed.